After crying her heart out the previous day, Velvet wandered aimlessly through the remnants of the city, now nearly unrecognizable. Dust swirled around her feet, and broken buildings loomed like silent ghosts. People watched her pass, their eyes filled with a mix of pity and fear. They wanted to help, but the terror of what lurked beyond kept them frozen in place, clinging to what little remained of their world.
Velvet, wake up, please.
Gloomy whispered softly from within, helpless in this world that clearly hated them both. But Velvet's heart was shattered, and she didn't hear her companion's quiet plea. She walked blindly, barely aware of the monsters still roaming the streets, narrowly escaping danger at every turn. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her, and her body reacted on pure instinct. Before she knew it, she had twisted the person around, slamming them face first into the sandy ground with a strength honed inside the sanctuary.
Velvet!
Gloomy's voice cut through the haze, finally pulling her back to reality. Velvet blinked, the fog lifting from her mind as she stared down at the person she had just tackled. It wasn't a monster, it was a soldier. He groaned as he tried to push himself off the ground.
"You're strong. That really hurt,"
he said with a wince, brushing the sand from his face as he stood.
"I'm so sorry."
Velvet gasped, immediately rushing to help him up.
"I didn't mean to."
The soldier shook his head, offering her a half-smile as he dusted himself off.
"No harm done. I'm just glad you snapped out of whatever that was."
As he steadied himself, he looked her over, concern softening his expression.
"Come with me. It's not safe here. I thought I heard someone else with you, though, but I don't see anyone."
He paused, then continued.
"You're strong, and we could use capable people. Want to carry a gun?"
Velvet felt gloomy stir within her.
Maybe the voice you heard was just, your imagination? Or, I guess it could have been me, but I don't really know honestly,"
she said, scratching her head awkwardly. The soldier eyed her curiously, but handed her the gun.
"Lives matter. Every survivor counts. Are you in?"
Yes, I'll take the gun."
Velvet stammered, her fingers brushing over the cool metal as she accepted the weapon.
Sheesh, sheesh.
Gloomy whispered from within.
"So sorry."
Velvet mumbled, glancing down and whispering back. The soldier gave her another confused look, but Velvet shook her head quickly and tried to act normal.
"You're really bad at this."
Gloomy whispered again, amusement in her voice.
"Shut up."
Velvet whispered back, a slight smile tugging at her lips. In precise, fluid movements, Chris walked ahead, holding his gun at the ready, scanning every corner like a seasoned action hero. Velvet, following behind, couldn't help but feel a little in awe. She'd always loved watching scenes like this in movies.
"Hey, what's your name, lady?"
Chris asked without looking back.
Velvet Santa Maria. And you?"
"Chris. Chris Justice from the U.S. Armed Forces."
He spoke calmly, still checking the partially damaged shop beside them. Velvet tilted her head, curiosity piqued.
"What's a U.S. soldier doing here?"
Chris chuckled softly.
"We were here for some quick ship maintenance. Funny thing is, that ship's not available anymore."
Huh? What does he mean by that?
Gloomy whispered from within Velvet.
"Stop squirming, you're tickling me. And I told you there are places you shouldn't touch."
Velvet whispered back, trying to keep her voice steady while sneaking a glance at Chris.
Yeah.
Gloomy replied with a mischievous tone. Chris suddenly stopped, raising his hand to signal silence.
"Did you hear that? I swear I heard something."
Velvet wiped the sweat from her brow, her heart pounding.
"I didn't hear anything."
She lied, trying to remain calm. Chris narrowed his eyes, stepping closer to her.
"You sure?"
Before Velvet could respond, the air filled with shrieks. A group of green goblins burst from the shadows, charging at them. Chris immediately opened fire, his gun equipped with a silencer. Velvet, with no time to think, grabbed her dagger. The gun she held didn't have a silencer, and the last thing they needed was more attention. The fight was fast and brutal. Velvet slashed through the goblins with quick, precise movements, while Chris efficiently dispatched them from a distance. Within moments, the skirmish was over, goblin bodies scattered across the ground. Chris checked his gun's magazine, his expression serious.
They're grouping up. Maybe planning a larger attack.
Velvet wiped the blood from her dagger.
That's not normal. Then again, nothing about this is.
Chris let out a quiet chuckle, holstering his gun.
You've got a point.
Velvet followed Chris back to their camp. As she stepped inside, she took in the scene. The mall had been transformed into a makeshift living quarter, but the people inside were battered, dirty, wounded, and with hollow eyes. Many seemed to have lost all hope.
Why are you all hiding here?
Chris didn't turn to face her.
You know the Red Dragon? It's out there somewhere. Keeping an open camp isn't an option for now.
At the mention of the Red Dragon, Velvet's breath caught in her throat. Her heart raced as memories flooded back. Chris, sensing the shift in her, quickly dropped the subject.
There's a good spot over there. Grab some tent materials and set up a private quarter for yourself.
He's right, Velvet. You need to rest. I'm worried about you.
Velvet nodded.
Understood. I'll take care of it.
As she walked toward the area Chris mentioned, he watched her retreating form, concern flickering in his eyes. He couldn't explain it, but he felt her pain as if it were his own.
I don't know what happened to you, but I can feel it.
Velvet quickly fixed her tent, the small space offering her a brief sense of shelter. She lay down, covering her eyes with her hand. Sensing it was safe, Gloomy emerged from her clothes and stretched, taking in the surroundings.
So, this is your world now.
Gloomy said quietly, surveying the modest space Velvet had created for herself.
Yeah. From a happy, vibrant life. This is what's left of it.
Gloomy shifted uncomfortably, her usual cheerfulness dimmed.
I'm really sorry, Velvet, about what happened to your world.
It's not your fault, Gloomy.
Lowering her hand, after a pause, she sat up with a small spark of energy.
Hey, what do you say we go on a little adventure?
Where are we going? We're supposed to stay safe here.
Velvet stood, brushing off her clothes.
I know, but I want to check my place. I still feel safer there than here.
You know I'll always support you, but are you sure?
Velvet smiled and hugged her.
I know that. Yes, I'm sure.
Reluctantly, Gloomy slipped back inside Velvet. Velvet chuckled at the sensation, whispering,
I told you stop touching my privates.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Promise.
Velvet was making her way out of the camp when Chris spotted her, his brow furrowing in confusion.
Hey, where are you headed?
I'm going to check on what's left of my place. See if it survived.
And if it didn't?
Velvet hesitated, her eyes dropping for a second.
Then I'll come back. But I need to know. Even if it's still standing, I doubt it has power like this camp.
Chris nodded slowly, taking in her resolve.
Where is it?
In Dara, near the police station.
Glancing toward the ruined city ahead, Chris let out a low whistle.
Dara's seen some rough days recently, but I get it. I know I can't stop you.
He reached into his vest and pulled out a two-way radio, holding it out to her.
Here, take this. If you find anything useful, anything that might help the rest of us, let me know.
Velvet blinked in surprise as she accepted the radio.
You trust me with this?
Chris shrugged with a slight grin.
Not much of a choice. Besides, what are you? One of them?
Oh, if only he knew.
Gloomy muttered, her voice echoing in Velvet's mind with a playful tone. Velvet stifled a laugh and shook her head.
Yeah, I guess I do look a little monstrous, don't I?
Chris laughed, shaking his head.
No, you look more like a princess. A warrior princess, maybe.
Velvet rolled her eyes, but a small smile tugged at her lips.
That's still a little mean. I'll be back.
Chris gave her a reassuring nod, but as she started walking away, his expression softened. He watched her retreating form, feeling a strange pull.
Stay safe out there.
As Velvet walked, Gloomy stirred within her.
You know, he's kinda cute. But you, a princess? I mean,
Velvet chuckled softly.
Don't start.
As soon as Velvet and Gloomy stepped outside, they both knew the safety of the camp was behind them. Their senses heightened, and Gloomy scanned the area with precision.
Velvet, straight ahead. I can hear fighting.
Gloomy whispered urgently.
Let's go.
They sprinted across the street, reaching the source of the commotion in moments. Ahead, a group of people, many of them injured, were trying to escape a hulking, humanoid bull.
It's a minotaur. They don't stand a chance.
As if I do.
You do.
Here goes nothing.
Velvet burst into the scene, her body moving on instinct. The group of civilians stared in shock as Velvet charged in, her speed creating a gust of wind that hit the Minotaur square in the face. The beast let out a furious roar, clutching its injured eyes.
Everyone, run. I'll distract it.
The group didn't hesitate. They bolted towards safety as Velvet stayed behind, her heart pounding as the Minotaur focused on her. Its heavy steps shook the ground as it began to charge.
Great, now it's after us.
Velvet stopped running and turned to face the beast.
Gloomy, I believe in you. Let's end this.
As the Minotaur roared and charged, Velvet spread her arms wide, and in an instant, Gloomy morphed into a dark, sleek whip, crackling with energy. With a swift motion, Velvet lashed the whip across the Minotaur's body. The force of the blow was so strong that the beast was torn apart in seconds, its body collapsing into a heap of shredded muscle.
Great work.
Velvet, still panting, frowned.
I feel like you did most of that.
No way, we did it together.
Gloomy replied, her voice bright and cheerful. Velvet let out a small laugh, shaking her head.
All right. Let's keep moving, stay sharp.
As they began walking again, Gloomy's voice turned thoughtful.
Why are we hiding your strength, Velvet?
Velvet's smile faded.
I just have a feeling. If they find out what we can do, we'll be in trouble. I don't want to lose you because of it.
Oh, Velvet.
To be continued. See you.